I didn't have time to think. The train was already at speed, and yet I saw a shadow keeping pace with the cars through the snow, matching an impossible rhythm. At first, my brain tried to deny it. A dog, a wolf, anything, but the shape was too long, too elastic, too silent. When it slipped out of the white curtain for just a second, the grey light hit striped fur, and my stomach dropped. A tiger, young but large, enough not to be just a cub, running parallel to the wagons as if this were normal, as if he knew exactly where I was going. The wind slammed snow against the cabin glass, and the cold crept even through metal. I was alone up front, the radio hissing, the track slicing through a nothingness of dark pines and ancient ice. Siberia doesn't give you an audience. It doesn't give you quick help. It doesn't give you second chances. I eased off the speed a little. Instinct. The idea was simple. He would get tired, give up, disappear into the in white. But when the train slowed, the tiger slowed too, keeping distance, keeping stamina, keeping intent. And that's when I felt the first thing that didn't match a predator. He wasn't hunting. He was following. I grabbed the radio and called the control center, trying to keep my voice steady. I have a large animal running alongside the track. Looks like a tiger. On the other end, a brief silence, the kind where someone decides whether you're insane. The response came with delay and static. They asked for coordinates, asked for confirmation, told me not to stop. Do not stop in open terrain. Maintain course to the next. A point. I looked again through the side window. The tiger was closer now, not to the rails, to the wagons, as if he were searching for something, as if he were listening, as if he were trying to identify a specific sound inside that metal monster. If you're feeling this tension with me, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and comment below with the city and country you're listening from. I read the comments, and that helps the channel more than you know. The first relief came disguised as a lie. A sharp curve slipped between us. Thick pines swallowed the side of the track, and I lost sight of the tiger. My chest released a breath I didn't even know I was holding. It's over, I thought. He gave up. But 2 minutes later, when the curve opened and the world went straight again, he was there, ahead now. Not beside me, ahead. A striped body on the snow, running toward. The train, cutting across the rails for a second as if trying to position himself. I applied the brake gently, not enough to lock the wheels, just enough to remind my own heart that I still had control. But controlling a train doesn't mean controlling what's outside, and Siberia loves to prove that. That's when I noticed the paw, the way he shifted his weight. It wasn't an obvious limp, just a small detail like an old pain biting with every step. He wasn't running on strength, he was running on urgency. And then, through the blowing snow, I saw something else. A dark glint caught at his neck, almost hidden by fur. A collar? No. Something thinner, stiffer, like a strip of leather with metal. My mind tried to fit the image somewhere that made sense, but there was no sense to be found. A tiger marked by humans at the edge of the world, following a train as if that train were his last chance. And in that moment, I understood that stopping or continuing weren't safe choices. They were just different kinds of danger. I kept the lowest safe speed, the kind of decision that feels right only because it hasn't gone wrong yet. The radio crackled again on the panel, voices overlapping. Someone saying a response team was hours away. Hours. In Siberia, that's just another word for figure it out yourself. The tiger reappeared beside the third car, breathing hard now, warm vapor bursting from his mouth in short clouds. The snow was getting deeper near the track, piled by the wind, and every stride demanded more effort. I thought, he's going to fall. I thought, he's going to give up. Neither happened. The next problem didn't come from the animal. It came from the place. Ahead I recognized the section before I fully saw it. An old, narrow steel bridge suspended over a river almost completely frozen. There the sound changes. The train echoes. The ground vibrates differently. I knew that if the tiger tried to cross alongside the train, there would be no space. Either he would stop or try something worse. Slowing down any further there was risky. Stopping was almost a sentence, but continuing meant forcing that creature into a decision he might not have the strength to calculate. When the first car entered the bridge, the clash of iron on iron exploded into the white silence. The tiger hesitated for the first time. He stopped in the snow, shook his head, growled, not at me, not at the train, but at the sound. I felt a brief, almost shameful relief. Now it's over, I thought again. But then he did something that froze me more than the wind. He didn't retreat. He stepped closer to the rails. Slowly, limping more clearly now, he sniffed the metal, pressed his nose to the sleeper as if searching waiting for confirmation, and then he climbed up. He didn't run, he walked, one step at a time, balancing that massive body in a space never meant for pause. The train moved slowly, but it moved. In the side mirror, I could see the void beneath the bridge, broken plates of ice drifting lazily in the dark river. If he slipped, there would be no second attempt. My hand shook on the control. Any sudden jolt could throw him off. Any acceleration could send him into panic. I had never driven something so heavy with so much care, as if the real weight was outside the train, not inside. Halfway across the bridge, he stopped, just like that. Sat down on the rails, breathing fast, eyes half closed, head lowered. The train stopped too, obeying fear more than the manual. We stayed there, two bodies trapped by bad decisions, in the narrowest place possible. That's when I heard it, not a roar, not a growl, a short sound, almost childish, a call. And then, from inside one of the cargo cars, something answered, a muffled noise, alive, small. The tiger lifted his head instantly, and I understood too late that he hadn't followed the train for me, or by accident. The sound came again, clearer this time. A short, weak, uneven noise, not loose metal, not shifting cargo. It was organic, alive, inside the train. I mentally ran through the cars, timber, fuel, equipment, and then I remembered the last coupling, rushed at the previous station. A reused transport container, sealed only provisionally because of the extreme cold. The kind of bureaucratic shortcut that feels small until the world sends the bill. The tiger stood up from the tracks, ignoring exhaustion, ignoring the pain in his paw, and began walking along the side of the car, pressing his nose to the metal, following the sound as if tracing an invisible map. The place offered no mercy. The bridge creaked under the stationary weight of the train, wind shoved sheets of snow upward from below, and I knew we couldn't stay there. If the system froze, if the brakes locked, if the river ice gave way under some old structure, anything could trap us at the worst possible point. The radio crackled again. Control wanted a decision. Proceed to the next open section. I looked at the tiger, now stopped exactly beside the cargo car, scraping his injured paw against the metal as if asking for passage. Moving meant dragging him. Stopping meant exposing him. There was no clean option. I climbed down from the cabin. That alone was a technical mistake. The cold hit like a wall, stealing the air from my lungs. My boots touched the bridge's metal, and every vibration climbed straight up my legs. The tiger slowly turned his head toward me. There was no aggression there, no fear. There was focus. I didn't exist to him. I was noise. The sound inside the car came again. Louder now. A short cry, almost broken. And then everything clicked with a weight that made my throat tighten. It wasn't one. It was two. The call I had heard earlier hadn't been a reply. It had been recognition. The next danger came fast. A sharp crack echoed beneath the bridge, followed by a small, but real, shift. Enough to remind me that this structure wasn't built for emotional improvisation. I shouted into the radio, asking for clearance to open the car. Denied. Procedure, safety, distance from a wild animal. While they argued protocol, the tiger did something that erased all of it. He lay down on the frozen ground, pressed his flank against the metal of the car, aligned his ear exactly where the sound came from inside, and he waited, quiet. It was in that strange silence that I noticed something else. The collar. I could see it clearly now. It wasn't for control. It wasn't recent. It was old, worn, with a frozen scrap of fabric still stuck to it, as if it had been improvised years ago. An old human mistake. An attempt at care that never ended the way it was meant to. The tiger wasn't an animal on the run. He was an animal returning. When partial opening of the container was finally authorized, the wind cut in like a blade. Inside, curled between torn blankets and wooden crates, was a cub. Too small, shaking, breathing unevenly. Probably separated during some illegal transport disrupted by the cold, hidden there in a hurry, forgotten. The crying stopped the instant the frozen air rushed in. The cub smelled before it saw anything. The tiger stood in a fraction of a second, completely ignoring my existence, and stepped forward, not fast, not abrupt, but final. That's when the happy ending tried to impose itself. Mother finds cub, Problem solved. But Siberia gives nothing for free. The wind intensified, the bridge groaned again, and the cub, startled by the open space and the void below, tried to retreat, in exactly the wrong direction. One more step, and it would fall between the car and the guardrail. The tiger lunged with his injured paw in, a pure reflex, too fast for a tired body. The metal was slick, the train still vibrated, and in that instant I understood that everything up to that point, the miles of pursuit, the wrong decisions, the hesitation, had only been the path to the real danger. Because now any wrong move didn't mean loss. It meant a fall. The cub slipped before either of us could react. It wasn't a clean fall. It was worse. The hind legs lost grip. The small body slammed sideways into the metal and became wedged in a narrow gap between the car and the bridge's side, held more by chance than structure. A short screech cut through the air, too thin to be called a roar. The adult tiger reacted without calculation. He stepped fully onto the rails, putting too much weight on the injured paw. The sound that came from him wasn't aggression. It was desperation. The train shuddered. Not much. Enough. A red warning flashed on the cabin panel, forgotten meters away. Any further movement could trigger an automatic safety protocol. Emergency lock. If that happened there, in the middle of the bridge, with the animal out of position, there would be no correction. Control was shouting now, voices overlapping, someone ordering me to retreat, someone yelling to keep distance. None of those voices were there. None could see the trapped cub, the small body shaking, the breath vapor thinning in the frozen air. I approached, slowly. Not the tiger, the cub. Each step was a silent agreement with something bigger than me. The tiger turned his head and truly saw me for the first time. His eyes didn't ask permission. They didn't threaten. They evaluated. If I was wrong, he would know. If I was too fast, he would react. The place, the bridge, the cold, the train allowed no correction. I knelt, feeling the ice cut through my clothes, and extended my hand just enough to touch the edge of the blanket caught on the cub. He struggled once, small, weak, alive. The next danger came from above. A louder metallic crack, followed by a sharp shift, the kind of sound that doesn't repeat twice before something gives. The bridge wasn't failing yet, but it was warning us. The tiger sensed it before I did. He stepped back half a pace, grabbed the cub with his mouth in a precise motion, trained by instinct, not strength. The small body slid free and dropped onto the snow between the rails. Safe, alive. For a full second, everything stopped. It was the second false ending. Cub rescued, animals reunited, problem solved. But the cold didn't stop, the wind didn't stop, and the train system didn't either. The alarm sounded, steady, low, signaling that safe stop time had been exceeded. Either I moved the train, or it would move itself. Neither option included a tiger and a cub on a bridge. The tiger instinctively positioned himself in front of the cub, his body forming a barrier, limping now, the pain finally demanding its price. He didn't advance. He didn't retreat. He waited, as if he knew this part was no longer his, as if he had done everything he could. I ran back to the cabin, lungs burning, hands numb, mind screaming for a solution that didn't exist in any manual. I engaged minimal forward motion, the kind you barely see. The train answered with a slow, heavy lurch. The tiger reacted instantly, pushing the cub off the tracks toward the bridge's side, where wind-packed snow formed a kind of improvised ramp. He tried to follow, the paw failed. The massive body slipped for half a second, long enough to convince me that this was the end. But he recovered, claws biting into metal, and launched himself off the line just as the next car passed through the space where he'd been. When the last car cleared the bridge, I slammed the brakes. The silence that followed wasn't relief, it was shock. Through the window I saw them in the snow, motionless for a moment. The cub stood first, unsteady, leaning into the adult's flank. The tiger breathed hard, his whole body trembling. There was no victory there, only survival. And I still didn't know that the place held one final cost. Silent, inevitable. that none of us there had chosen to pay. When the silence finally settled, it didn't bring peace. It brought reality. The cold returned to what it had always been, impersonal, constant, indifferent. I stepped down from the train again, this time with doubled care, feeling my legs answer a second too late. They were only a few meters from the line. The cub pressed against the larger body, as if it had learned in a single day the meaning of shelter. The adult tiger tried to take a step and failed. The front paw gave out completely. He didn't fall, but he froze there, rigid, breathing in short bursts. The price of the journey had arrived. The radio came back on, less urgent now, heavier. The teams were finally on their way. Veterinarians, wildlife agents, people trained to turn emotion into protocol. I responded automatically, giving coordinates, describing the situation with words that couldn't carry. What I was seeing, the problem now wasn't the train, not the bridge, it was time. A wounded tiger in Siberia doesn't have hours to spare. It has minutes that decide the rest of the story. The cub began pacing in small circles, calling softly, pressing his nose into the adult's neck, trying to provoke a response. The tiger answered by resting his head against him, a minimal, precise gesture, as if saying, "I'm here." But I could see the tremor. I could see the exhaustion that doesn't yield to willpower. That body had gone too far on a leg that should never have been asked to carry that much. When the first helicopter appeared on the horizon, the sound didn't bring relief. It brought a new risk. The cub startled and tried to run. The tiger tried to follow and collapsed, not onto his side, onto his knees. A dull impact in the snow that I felt in my teeth. He didn't try to stand again. He only turned his head toward the cub and released a low, steady sound. A command. The cub obeyed, stopped, returned, lay down beside him. The professionals approached at a distance, tranquilizer rifles ready, voices low. The plan was simple on paper: sedate the adult, transport both to a rehabilitation base. The problem was in the detail no one said out loud. Sedating a tiger in that condition, in that cold, after that exhaustion, could stop more than movement. It could stop everything. I saw the hesitation in the veterinarian's eyes as he studied the paw, the strained breathing, the way the tiger kept the cub pressed to his chest even while down. The decision came, the way most decisions had that day, late and incomplete. A minimal dose, maximum control, tense, waiting. The dart struck. The tiger didn't react with anger. He simply took one deep breath, as if releasing something he had been holding since the first kilometer. The cub tried to wake him, nudging, calling, not understanding why that presence didn't answer the same way. No one moved for long seconds. Then the veterinarian knelt, pressed an ear to the striped flank, and shook his head. Once. There was no announcement, no words. The place doesn't ask for explanations. The cub stayed there, curled in, pushing against the larger body as if persistence could reorder things. Someone tried to pull him away. He growled, weak, desperate. And in that moment, I understood the final meaning of the entire pursuit. It wasn't to live together afterward. It was to arrive together at the end. When they finally wrapped the cub in blankets, he no longer resisted. He only kept looking back at the motionless body in the snow as they carried him away. The train remained still. The helicopter lifted. The bridge returned to being just iron and wind. Hours later, when the line was cleared, I passed slowly through the same point. There were no visible marks. The snow had already covered almost everything. The place looked unchanged. But I knew that there, across a few invisible kilometers, an animal had turned rails into a path and paid with everything he had so that someone wouldn't cross it alone. All that was left was the final silence. I returned to that stretch weeks later, not because I had to, because some part of me was still stuck there. Siberia was unchanged, the same straight line cutting through the white, the same motionless pines, the same wind. That keeps no memory. If someone passed by without knowing, they'd see nothing but rails and snow, no sign, no marker. Only I knew that place had been a choice. The cub survived. I learned that from a brief report, too technical to carry the weight it deserved. He was in a rehabilitation center, far from the railway line, fed by human hands, surrounded by fences that don't replace presence. They said he was adapting. Well, they said he had a chance. They didn't say, and I didn't ask, whether he still called out at night. Some things you learn not to look for. The first time I crossed the bridge after everything, I reduced speed with no operational reason. The system didn't ask, no one ordered it. I did it anyway. I looked at the exact spot where the tiger had fallen. There was no body, no mark, just an empty space that felt larger than it should. The train passed, the metal vibrated, the river remained frozen, and still something felt out of place, as if the world had become quieter than before. Sometimes when the cabin is still and the radio stays silent, I catch myself remembering the way he ran. It wasn't strength, it was decision. Each kilometer torn from pain, each step carried by something that can't be taught. He didn't win anything. He didn't change the world. He didn't leave heroes behind. He simply refused to abandon while there was still a path, and somehow that stayed with me. I never told this whole story to anyone on the line. Some things don't fit into station conversations, but every time I pass that place, I look out for 1 second longer, not expecting to see anything, just acknowledging, because that stretch is no longer just part of the route. It's a place where someone ran beyond the limit so another wouldn't cross alone. The place looks the same, but I know it isn't.